In this course, you are going to master JavaScript. I'm going to be building a project from scratch to start to finish, and I'm going to be explaining each and every topic you need to know, from variables all the way to the functions, to the local storage, loops, array, accessing documents in the DOM, accessing forms, changing the elements in the DOM. We're going to be building this banking app. This is a very simple banking app. You can make a deposit and you can use your money on the app to buy data, and it's going to show you the list of transactions. You can deposit, you can buy data, it's have validations. This app is what you need to build a very strong background in JavaScript. Without talking too much, let's jump to it. One of our developers created this app that will help you manage your data. So basically you can deposit some money and you can spend that money on data, right? The problem is they left the company before they could get to JavaScript to make this app functional. And they left us with the task now. We have to actually do that. We need to add JavaScript such that when the user click deposit, they get a screen to deposit money. When they click buy data, they get a screen to buy data. When they click edit profile, they get a screen when they can edit a profile, and the greeting must change according to that. Okay, let's see what we have right now in our app. We have the basic HTML with the styles and script loaded. Okay, and we are using defer. Defer makes sure that the script executes once the HTML is done loading, which is very important to avoid many errors. Our script, though, is very empty. Our styles, they are just helping us to make sure that these apps look nice. One thing I think is worth mentioning is that we have an overlay over here, and this overlay, okay, let's go through HTML quickly. We have the greetings, hi Ndumiso. You can see that this is very hard-coded. We have the balance, which is hard-coded. Then we have these buttons for quick actions, these three actions that you see here. Each button have the ID, okay? And then we have the list of transactions. They are also hard-coded, each with the type of transaction, the date and the amount, deposit, and they bought data for 200 rands. Hence their account is 1.8, even though it's hard-coded. When the user click this buttons, they need to see the pop-up where they can actually edit the information. Those modals are here. Each modal have the class overlay, and then it have the ID of the type of modal. Inside we have the heading and the form. So for example, let's add a style here and say display flex or block. You can say block is fine. Okay, let's just say flex. You can see if I say display flex on the edit profile, this pop-up shows up. So when the user click edit profile, this needs to show. Basically, all we need to do is to come to this and add a class of display flex. If I remove it, it's gone. And the reason why it's gone is because the overlay have the default display of none. If I change this to flex, all the pop-up will show for buying data, the other one underneath for deposit, the other one underneath for edit profile, because each and every one of these models have the class of overlay. So if I apply the style there, it's going to be applied in all these models. Okay, so we're going to leave it none because we want the user to be able to see this and interact with this button without being blocked by the pop-up unless they want to do a transaction. Okay, without any further ado, let's jump to our JavaScript. This is the course that will help you master JavaScript from zero to hero. The first thing you need to understand in JavaScript is that we have variables. We have variables. So a variable is basically a way you store data. To store data, right? So for example, if I want to store a name of a person, I can just say const name is equal to, for example, John, okay? Like that. So now I have the name John on my screen in a variable. This variable is called a string because it's just holding a word. So I can say John like this with double quotes, I can say John like this with single quote, or I can say John like this with backticks. Okay, like that. John, still the same thing. Okay, you can also store the numbers. For example, if you want to store the balance, you can say maybe the balance is 1000. Okay, this is the variable of type number. Okay, so that's all you need to know about variables, really. These are simple variables, but they will get complex as we work on the app. For now, the app is saying, hi Ndomiso. I want to change it to say, hi John Doe. It must reference this variable. How can we do that? Okay, let's check our HTML. Where is that greeting? That greeting is over there. Hi Ndomiso. How do we change that? We are going to use the class of greeting. So in JavaScript, you have the document. The document, you can refer to it as the HTML. It's giving you the access to the HTML. You can query the element in the HTML. So what we want to do, we want to go to the HTML and query this heading. So let's get the heading first. We're gonna go, this is a comment, okay? This is a comment, it's not gonna be executed by JavaScript. So greeting message. So first of all, let's get the greeting heading. I'm creating a variable, I'm calling it greeting heading. And I said we have a document object that gives us the access to the HTML. We call this a DOM. Okay, so I'm going to say document is accessible for me in JavaScript anywhere. And then to get the element by class name, you can just say dot get element by class name. And then here, you're going to just pass the class name, which is greetings. Okay. Okay, then now you have greetings. So now, if I want to change the content of this heading now, I can just say greetings heading dot inner HTML or dot content, really. I think text content. Okay, let's just use that inner HTML. Inner HTML is equal to hello name. But our hello have a comma there. You see this one, it does not have a comma. One thing nice about backticks is that you can actually use string and separation inside of it. So that means you can append other values. If I remove this, you see, let's refresh the page. Okay, let's see if we got everything correct. So we're saying, right, we have greetings, okay? And then we go to the document, we get element by class name. And the class name is what? It's greetings. Let's see if we got this right. That is correct. And then we're saying greetings heading dot inner HTML is equal to hello. Okay, so this is supposed to change this, but it's not. So we're going to right click and say inspect and check if we have the error in our document. Okay, go to the console and we do not have errors. Another thing we can check is to check if our script is loaded. The easiest way to do that on top, we can just say alert hello world. So alert hello world is happening. So that means our script is loaded successfully. Then we have the balance, then we have the greetings. Get document by class name, greetings. Okay, let's try a different thing. Let's just say document.query query selector. Okay, and then because now we're using query selector, we need to use a dot since the class is presented by a dot. Okay, so now it's changing. So I think I just forgot how to use document.getElement by class name, which is weird, but it's okay. So we're gonna stick by query selector. I love query selector, by the way, because it's actually generic. You can pretty much pass anything here in parameters. If you know CSS, you know in CSS if you have a class, you use a dot. So you pretty much just do the same thing here. You just pass a dot. Okay. So now we're just saying hello. So we can, for a start, we can just really say hello and then plus name, right? Okay, now we can remove this alert because we don't need it now. So it's saying hello John Doe. Let's put a comma here. I like my hellos with a comma. Hello John Doe. Okay, so now we've done two things: created variables, and then we got the element from the HTML, and then we changed the element of that HTML. These are the basic of JavaScript. This is the output, how you output the data to the user. Now, what's next we want to do? Okay, we have the balance. Let's do the same thing with the balance. So we can also say balance message, say const balance heading, query selector dot balance. Let's just make sure this is what we want to change, right? Not this. We want to change this. So let's make sure that the class is correct. And then we can also say balance heading dot inner HTML is equal to balance is, but we really don't want to do that. We don't want to do that yet. So the balance is 1000, but we can append the currency if we want to. Let's just say const currency over there is equal to USD, for example. So now you can just say currency plus balance, you see, 1000 USD. But I'm in South Africa, so I'll be using rand, so I'll just put an R there. Okay, so this is how variables works. This is how you get elements from the DOM, and this is how you change it. If you're saying inner HTML, that means we are going inside of that element, which in this case is this one, and we are changing what is inside that HTML element. Okay, perfect. Now, let's keep going. What else we want to do? We've done the name, we've done the balance. Now we want to do the actions. We're still going to recalculate this balance, but now it's really nice. If I want to change it there, I can just change it here and everything changes. If I want to change the name, I can just change it here, Jane, and save, and then everything changes. So it's good. Now we need to be able to click these buttons, okay? If we want to do that, before we get there, I want to tell you something, right? Let's say you deposit money. Const deposit is equal to, let's say, 500. Okay, so now, and let's say this is 1000, so it is easy to calculate. Now what you want to do is you want to add deposit to balance. So if you want to do some calculations, you can just say balance is equal to balance plus deposit. Okay, and then you save. But this would give us an error. Maybe not on the UI. Yes, actually it's going back to 1800, which is this, because JavaScript is breaking, and the reason is assignment to constant variable. This is not allowed. If you have this assignment to constant variable, it's because we have three types of variable in JavaScript. We have var, we have let, and we have const. Let's not talk about var and just don't use it as an old way of doing stuff. So we can just come here and say the balance is let, because we still want to change it later. You see now the error is gone and the value is changed to 1500. Okay, cool. Let me just actually bring back this guy. Let me keep him open. Okay, I love it when it's have this frame over here. Now that's how we can actually append the deposit into our balance. Okay, so we can do calculations with JavaScript and we can do variables. Now let's handle some events. Before we handle the event, I want to talk about functions in JavaScript. Functions. A function is something very simple, right? So if you want to create a function, you just use the keyword function, and then you give it a name, right? So the name could be something like anything. Let me just say alert my name, okay? Then you open the brackets, and then you do this. Inside of the function, that is where you can put logic. For example, you can just say alert name, which is that name over there, right? So, but if I refresh, nothing is happening. There is no alert. It's because all the functions must be called. If you want to call the function, you just call it by name. You can just do this, alert, and save. See, John Doe, we're alerting the name. If you want another one, function, alert, balance. You can even say my balance. You can put underscore, but you can't put spaces, you see. You can put underscore. I think that is the only characters that are allowed in functions. Alert balance. You see the balance is not coming, but I can call this as well. Alert balance by name, John Doe, and then balance. You see, I can alert everything here. If I'm changing the balance before I alert it, let me just say balance is equal to balance plus 1000. Another syntax to do this, you can just say plus equal to 1000. So that will take the current value of the balance and add 1000. Let's see. Gendo, now the balance is 2500. Okay, so this is how functions work. The functions, they help us keep the code clean, you know. For example, let's remove all these functions now. For example, if you want to show them the pop-up, let's just keep moving forward, leave the code that you already did. If you want to show the pop-up, you can have a function that shows the pop-up, and that function can look like this. Function show, let's just show deposit model. Okay, so this function is going to do that job. Where is the deposit model? Let's find it. Deposit model is here, right? So you can just say const deposit model is equal to document.querySelector. Right now we're using the ID, so we're going to use the hashtag, okay? And then once we find it, we're going to change the style to display block. Remember what we were doing before, but we want to make it flex so that it doesn't break our styles. Okay, I haven't called this, but if I were to call this function anywhere in my code, now you would see that the deposit model is actually showing. Super cool, right? It's super cool. Now that we can do this, let's just not call the function, but let's just show other models. Function. So this is not withdrawal, but it's by data model. Okay, so same thing. By data model, query selector by data model ID. All we need to make sure we do is that the ID is the same. Okay. Okay. One more is the one for edit profile. Make sure that you do this on the overlay so that the overlay can show. Okay. So now you can have function here that show edit profile model. Okay. Let's just make sure the ID again is correct, and it is correct. Okay. So we have these functions. We can call this one if you want, just to see if it works, and it is working. Bam. You can edit the profile. Okay. Now that I'm looking at it, I would like to make my overlay on my form. Yeah, this is the form. I would like to make it width 90%. Yeah. Okay. So we need to do this on the form level, right? Okay, let's just do it on the form level. Let's just say form width 90%, okay? And then yeah, just close this. Okay, it doesn't want to do it. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. Let's leave it. We are not there anyway. Okay, cool. Now that we can show these things, but we don't want to show these things by default, right? We only want to show them if the user clicks these buttons. See now, it's becoming really, really easy. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna handle button click events. Okay, so we're gonna find each and every one of these buttons. So let's see. The first button that we have is deposit. So I'm gonna say const deposit button is equal to document.querySelector deposit button. Is it deposit button or just deposit? It's deposit. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the rest of these buttons. So we have byte data and edit profile. Okay, so I'm going to go there, change the IDs. This one will be edit profile, this one will be byte data, and then this one will be by data button, and then this one will be edit profile button. Okay, so now we have all these three buttons. You see how much we need variables in JavaScript. In any programming language, we've been creating the variables throughout. These are simple variables. This is just a string. These are complex variables. These are elements. This is the HTML element. So now these are all HTML elements because you're using document.querySelector and this returns an HTML element or null. Okay, cool. If you didn't get that, it's okay. We'll get used to it. Now, for each and every one of these buttons, we want to make sure we handle the event when they are being clicked. So, to do that, we're going to say, now let's just handle. It's fine. We don't even need to, let's just say deposit button dot add event lister. So now we call the add event button, and then we specify the type of event, which is a click, and then we call the function. When we're handling the events, this is the only time where you don't necessarily have to do this when you're calling a function, okay? I don't know if this will work, but I don't think this is the way, okay? Yeah, you see, it's kind of misbehaving. But now, this is edit, not delete. This is edit profile, okay? So if we click here, you see now, what? That's great. These are doing nothing yet, but this one is showing something because we're saying that if we click this button here, just add this event, call this function. So now we're going to do the same thing. If we click this button here, we want to handle the click event by calling the show by data model. So we're just gonna kind of do the same here, like that and like that. Okay. So now all these buttons are functional. By data, see, I can enter the amount, edit profile, I can enter the name and submit. The problem is if I submit these forms, you see they redirect me to another page, and that page, it takes me to this URL, see, purchase data. It's because that's how the forms works. If you click submit, they submit and redirect, change the page. It is your job to change that, to handle that with JavaScript, so that they don't redirect to another page, but rather they do something else. So to do that, we are going to handle another event, which is a form submission. So we're going to say handling form submissions. We have many forms. That's a thing. Now, we've been using querySelector all along. Now we are going to see a different one. Okay, this one is called querySelector all. That means you want to get all the forms in the page, not just one. This will get one item. Returns the first element that is a descendant of the node that matches the selector. You see, it returns one element. But now we're going to say const forms is equal to document.querySelector all. You see this one? It returns all elements of the node that matches the selector. So everything that has the selector form is going to be returned. You see now, because I'm just selecting with the tag, I'm not putting a dot or a hashtag. That's how powerful is this. Even this, you can do the same thing. You can pass any element the div, and it's gonna find all the divs in the page. Okay, cool. Right now, we want to do it, hanging the form submission event, okay? But we have many forms. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna, first of all, this, if you look at the type of this is not an array. This is a node list, okay? We're gonna learn types later, but we want to convert this thing into the array. But before we do that, let me introduce you to arrays. What is an array? So far, we learned variables, that you can store a value in variables, right? Like a balance, one value. But what if I want to store multiple values? Then that is where I can use the array. Stores multiple values, okay? That's what the array does. And the syntax of the array, the way you create it, is a variable. Const, let's just say items is equal to, you open square brackets. If you open square bracket like this, that means this is an empty array. Okay, cool. If you want to put items inside an array, you can just say 100, -9, 0, 11. So I can put any items inside of the same types. So now these have only 1000, but these have 1000, 9, 0, and 11 inside. The question is, can I use this thing though? Yes, you can use it. If I want to say alert items at 0, that will give me the first item, which is 100, as you can see here on my alert, right? Items at 1 is going to give me -9, as you see in the alert. So this thing, when it counts, is counting from index 0. Index is just like a pointer, right? It's like I'm saying, hey, I want to point at index. If I want 11, I need to find out which index is this. 0, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm pointing at index 3 and I'm going to get 11. So I can even do 11 is 5, which would be 16, you see? So this is how arrays works, okay? Now, what if I want to alert all the items at once? That is where I use a loop. A loop is something that's repeat over something, okay? So, for example, if I have items, I can just say items dot for each, okay? So what I'm saying is I want to loop through for each, okay? I'm calling that function. This function, it takes in another function inside called callback function, okay? So you know, if you're creating a function, you just open brackets. So I'll just open brackets and I will do this arrow and open curly braces. These are called arrow functions, okay? If you want, you can just say function, and then this function will be taking an item, and then you can open this as well, and then you can do whatever you want to do with the item, okay? So now, let's say I want to alert each and every one of these values, okay? Okay, my ID is just becoming slow for some reason, okay? If I want to alert item and save, let's see what will happen. See, this thing is alerting 100, it's done with 100, -9, 0, 11, and it's done. You see? So now that means I can use the for loop, the for each loop, to loop through each and every item. But this is a very complicated syntax. This is the easy syntax. Just say item, then you use the arrow function, you open braces. Then here you can alert the item. Just like that, 100, 9, 0, and 11. We are done. So now that you know how loops and array works and what we use them for, we use them to store multiple items. So we have multiple forms in the page. We have this form. It's gonna go there and find this form, it's going to find this form, and it's going to find this form. All these forms will be submitted. So now we are going to convert these forms into the array. So now I'm going to say let's create another variable, const forms array is equal to, gonna use the array class dot from method, then say forms. And then now if we hover over this, you can see now that this dot from, if we hover over this, you can see that it's creating an array from iterable objects. Iterable object is this one, not list. It's one of the iterable objects. Now we have the array of HTML form element, which is nice. Let's log them. Console.log array forms. Let's check the console. We have 3 forms. The first form has the ID of profile form, other one is deposit form, other one is data form. Let's look at the profile form. Let's have the input and another input inside. And if we go there, you can see that yes, indeed, the profile form have 2 inputs. So we have all the forms now in an array form. Now we can play around with them. I already showed you that you can say form array dot for each. Remember, you can just use that loop. It's a function, and then this would give you a form, and then we do the callback function. Okay. Now this is a form, right? This is a form. You see, if you hover over it, this is a form element. So all you need to do now, you're gonna do what we did here. You're gonna handle the event. So you're gonna say form dot add event listener, and the type of event you wanna add is submit, right? Submit, and then just like we did it before, let's just create another function, and here we're gonna say from submitted handler. Okay, now I'm gonna have another function here, function just like that, takes the event and okay. So you might ask yourself now, okay, I would say, why are we passing the event now? Well, because we are interested in the event at this point, unlike before. Before, we didn't care about the event itself, but in this case, we do want to know the event because we want to extract information from the event. What I will do is I'll just console.log event. That's what we're going to do right now. So let's open the console, open deposit form, and click submit. Okay, it's still doing that behavior. So one thing we need to do, we need to event.prevent default. So we're just telling JavaScript, hey, the default behavior of this form is that it's redirect to another page. But right now, we don't want to do that behavior. We're going to define our own custom behavior. So let's see. Now something is being logged. Deposit form is being logged. Okay, refresh. By data form is being logged. Refresh, edit profile data is being logged, and we are not redirecting anymore. We are just logging data. Okay, so now we successfully handled the form action and we prevented the event. Now all we need to do is to be able to use the information that the user is giving us to actually manipulate the states of the profile. The easiest one I can think of is the edit profile. It's quite easy to deal with. Before we do this, let's talk about the event. Okay, in the event, if you log it, let's log the event again. Click here. It's basically giving us the element that was clicked. This element have the target. The event have a target. It's actually giving us the event that was clicked and the type of it, and then inside it have a target. The target is the element that was clicked or that was triggered. In this case, the form with this ID was triggered. As you can see now, as I have here on the inputs, you can see that it's actually hovering the input and the target is the actual form, as you can see there on the app on the side. So I basically have the access to the full form. Now I can extract data and do stuff with it. Let's do that. To extract data, remember I told you there's a target there, right? So to get that target, so I can just say const form is equal to event dot target. Okay, this is the form that we have there itself. Okay, now inside of this form we want the input fields, so we're gonna just say const name is equal to form dot query selector. This would be great actually, but let's use the ID for now. I don't want to go to types, so we're gonna put the ID of name there and say dot value. Okay, and then same thing with the email. Const email is equal to query selector with the ID of email. Let's see, we need to make sure that this has the ID of, and this has the ID of email, otherwise we're not going to find those elements. Then what we're going to do, we're going to just console dot log name and the email. Let's see if our code works. So edit profile, then we put the name, then we put the email and submit. You see, this is the name we put and this is the email we put. Let's change the name to Jane and see, Jane Smith. Bam. So as much as soon as I'm clicking this, you see it's keep logging everything that is here on the form. So now, so far we've learned how to select elements, how to declare variables, get element from the document, change the content of the element from the document, handle the click event of the element, also handle the forms or multiple elements, convert those elements to the array, go through each and every array, and then handle submit handler. Inside of a submit handler, that is where we actually get the values of a thing, right? Okay, and we can see that we can extract the values, but the question is, should we be doing this here? Because now remember, even if you submit the deposit, it comes here. Even if you submit the buy data form, it comes here. So we need to handle this data based on the type of information that is there. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to introduce you to another thing now, right, called if statements. Okay, you know arrays, you know loops in a very high level. Now I want you to know about if statements. If statements is something like this. You want to do something based on the condition. For example, the deposit is 500 in this case, right? Or the balance is 1000 in this case. After I do this, it becomes 1500. If you want to put a condition, you can say if balance is less than 1200, alert, you have sufficient funds to buy data. You can say else alert, you have sufficient funds to buy data. Okay, let's refresh. You have insufficient funds to buy data. It's gonna come here. Look at the balance. The current value of a balance is 1000. Is 1000 less than 1200? Yes. So it's gonna say you have insufficient funds. If you cut this and put it here, remember here, now the balance is 1500. So now guess the result. It's gonna say you have the sufficient funds to buy data. You do not have to put an else. You can actually just do this. So now that means it's not going to run because this condition is not met, but we do not have the else to execute another condition. It was going to run if it was here only. I hope you understand how if statement works. With that information, let's go down to the handler. Remember, we have the form. The form have what? The ID, right? So let's take advantage of that. Let's say now we don't want to do this unless if the form dot ID is equal to deposit form, okay? And then this is what I want to do, okay? And after I've done that, I will call another function that says, let's put it here. Let's create another function that say function handle profile date. Takes the name and the email, okay? And then it's just alert name plus space plus email, okay? So if that's the case, then I will call profile update. Okay, this is update, okay? Profile update. Let's see. Deposit 200. Nothing happens because the condition is not met. Edit profile. Submit. Nothing happens because there is an error on the code. It's supposed to call this, but this is email. So I think this is just a typo that is breaking this. So let's try again. Cool. So now we need to check the console and find out what is going on. We are letting this name plus email console.log name email. Let's get rid of this. Okay, that's not the case, but there are no errors. See, that's where the problem begins. When you don't get errors. Handy profile update. Seeing the name and email. Ooh. But this is not a deposit form. It's a profile form. Right, it's a profile form. So that's where the error is in the condition. So now I can let's my name followed by my email. Okay. So that means I'm getting to this point based on the condition. So you see now if statements are so powerful because we can control the flow of the code. That is why they are called controlled flows. Now let's just finish that part up. Here we have the ID of the deposit amount. Okay, and then here we need another ID for this one here for data amount. Okay, so now I'll copy this and copy that. Okay, you see now we're not querying from the document here, we're querying from the form because we know for sure that these elements exist in this document, this form, so it's just faster to just focus on this form rather than focusing on the document. Okay, cool. So now let's handle these two more forms. Deposit form. So now we can just say else if this is deposit form. So you can use the else if statement as well if you have more conditions, right? It's gonna go there. If that's not true, it's gonna try this one. If that's not true, it's gonna keep moving. Okay. If this is a deposit form, let's just make sure that this is correct, right? Then we're gonna do the query selector on the amount. Inside the deposit form with the deposit amount, so let's just make sure that the ID is correct, and then we're going to handle deposit. Okay, let's create that function handle deposit. Let's just alert amount that you deposited plus deposited successfully. Let's create another function to handle data purchase. Okay, so that's exactly what we're gonna do here. So now all we need to do is to literally do that, and then now we can also say else if this is by data. Just make sure that this is correct. By data model, not by data model, we're looking at the form, right? This is data form. So if this is data form, we're going to look at the data amount and we're going to call handle data purchase. So this was a long one, but I believe from here we have everything deposited successfully. Okay, purchase successfully. So now you see that using if statement and else if, we are able to query the correct form values and also call the correct function. Now what we're going to do now, we're going to implement these functions such that when the profile is updated, this changes, and when the deposit and the purchase is made, this is changing and this list is also updating. Okay, so how do we actually handle the profile update? Right now we want to make sure that if the user changes the name, that is the name that we're going to be displaying here, and when they are done we want to make sure that this closes. Okay, that part is really easy to close. All we can do is we can say edit profile model. Do we have that model yet? Okay, we don't have the model yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the models then. No, come on, we should have it. Oh, we're doing it on the go. Okay, cool. Let's rename these functions. Say this is show. Okay, show or hide, show or hide, and this one as well, show or hide. So as you can use them for showing and hiding the element instead of redefining this, because I mean we already did this. We already queried the document. We don't want to do that again. Okay, so a function can take parameters if you want to. Okay, so we can take a parameter of height and we can say by default this is false. Okay, by default this is false. So for example, when the user is done updating the profile, I can just say show or hide profile edit model, and I will pass through here because I want to hide it, right? So now I will put an if statement. Remember, if hide, and then I want to make sure that this is display none. Okay, but I'm only running this if this is true. By default it's false. So if I did not pass it like here, it's gonna be false. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna do that here, and also do that here, and also do that here. Okay, you see now, we want our code to be efficient. Okay, we don't want dirty code like this. You see, we're repeating this thing so many times. So now we can group this functionality in one function as well. Okay, this function is going to be function, let's say show or hide element. Okay, it's going to be called show or hide element, and then it's gonna have the height of false by default. That is correct. And then we will say if element, we want to make sure that we only run this if the element is set. Okay, then if the element is set, is not null, we're going to make sure that we change the display to flex, otherwise we're going to change this display to none. So with this code, now once we have the element here, we can just call that function show or hide element. Then we don't have to do this. Okay, remove this, and then here as well do the same thing, show or hide element, and here we do the same thing, show or hide element. What did we just do now? We just simplified our code. We remove duplicate code and just put it in one function. This function does not care which element it is. If you're giving it a function element and you're giving it the flag, it's just going to do that job for you. Let's see if our code is still working. At this profile. It's broken. Okay, let's see. Why is it broken now? Do we have any errors? Okay. We probably the error is this height here, because we're not passing it over there. So the easiest way would be just to remove it. Okay, let's just remove it. Let's not pass it. Okay, it's making this very complicated. I'm gonna do it differently, and here as well, let's not pass it. Okay, let's see now. Edit profile. Okay, show or hide edit profile. We're finding the profile. Let's not pass the hide here. Let's not pass the hide here, and let's not pass the hide here. Okay, so this one, let's just say const height is equal to false for now. I'm gonna fix this. Okay, at least our code is working again. So what we'll do is we will say height is false. Okay, now check if the element have display property of flex, and then we'll change it to true, because that means that element will already be visible. Okay, by default it's false, and we want to change it later, so we must use let. Okay, so now we will say if element, okay, we will say if element dot style dot display is equal to flex, then height will be true. Okay, height will be true. We're checking if the element is already displaying flex, then we just say height is true, then we hide it. I think this should work. Let's edit again. We highlight the name and surname, and then we hide. See, it's working like a charm. It's working like a charm. It's working like a charm. Okay, now let's try something out. Okay, let's not do that yet. Actually, let's keep moving. So here as well, we can just show or hide deposit model, and here we can just also show or hide buy data model. So if we're buying data for 1000 and it's buy, then the model is gone. You see now our UI is working perfectly. It is not the perfect way of displaying data. Maybe as a bonus of this tutorial, I will show you how to create your own custom alert that is user friendly. Okay, we're on the 90 lines of code and it's going well so far. Okay, so let's just keep moving. Now, we know for sure that this name is temporal. We will change it. So we're gonna use let here. We know for sure. The currency and the deposit, we don't even care about these two lines. we're just testing something, okay? So it's 1,000, it's just taking this one, and we're no longer adding the deposits, which is fine. So when we're editing the profile, we want to change the name of the person, or we want to change the greeting, which is this part that we did here, okay? So why can't we just take this thing and put it in a function? This function would be called function update greeting, okay? And then it's going to do this job here, okay? See now, it's saying hi Ndumiso, but if we go over there as one of the first thing, we can just say updates greeting, okay? And then again, it's working. It's easy now because we can reuse this information. Here, see now, we don't want to alert anything. We want to say we can alert profile updated successfully, but what we can do is we can just say let's change this to new name, okay? You can just say name is equal to new name and then update greetings. You see, we are saying new is equal to new name, update greetings. So basically, after changing the name, we update greetings, we go back to find this element and then change the greeting based on the new name that we already passed here. The email, we don't want to do anything about it yet. You can just really leave it, okay? You can leave the email parts of things, leave the email parts of things, and leave the email parts of things. Don't do anything with the email at the moment. Let's just deal with the name. So, Ndumiso Mthembu, save. Profile updated successfully, and now it's saying hello Ndumiso Mthembu. Nice. But if I refresh, it's going back there. That is the problem now. We'll sort it out later. Now let's deal with buy data and deposit. These ones are already working. Now, let's assume that when the user opens the account, their default account is 0, okay? They do not have any deposits. But before that, let's take this HTML and convert it to JavaScript. The way we're going to do that, we're going to use the arrays, okay? I already spoke about arrays, so let's just use the arrays. So we're going to say the actions is an empty array. If we want to mimic what is on the UI right now, we can say we have 1,000, and then we have another 1,000, and then we have negative 200. So 1,000 means deposits, negative means they bought data, okay? Because this is a spend. Let's say they bought another data for minus 500, okay? Where we stand right now, we can literally calculate balance based on the transactions. So let's create another function. You see how important functions are? They group the code based on the functionality. So each piece of code becomes a method. So now we are going to call update balance here. Update balance, okay? Balance is 0, okay? Currency plus balance. Okay, let's just say here balance is 1,000. You see, now the balance is 1,000 again. Let's make it 0, and then we need to calculate it. Remember, we have something called the loop. So we can go through transactions. We can say transactions.forEach. You remember we already did this here on the form. Transaction.forEach. We're going to have a transaction in a callback function. We can do the logic inside that callback function. So if you say console.log transaction you will see that you have this 1000, negative 200, and negative 500. There are two 1000. It is why there is a 2 here. So now all you need to do is to take each and every one of these transactions and add it to the balance. So you can say balance is equal to balance is equal to balance plus transaction and save. Alright, you have 1300. Now it can't help but to be correct because it's maths. So now we're doing the balance calculations using this loop, and then we go ahead and find the heading and update it with the current new balance. Beautiful. Okay, but these transactions here that are showing on the screen, they are not these ones, because this is 1.8. If you look at that, they are these ones. Why don't we just make sure that we render transactions as well and just have the transaction rendering from this data over here? Let's go ahead and do that after update balance. Create another function, render transactions. Okay, I'm going to close all this. Same thing we're going to do. We're going to go through transactions like we did here. Okay, but now it's different. We're not doing this. We are trying to print what is inside of this div transactions container. Okay, not necessarily transactions container, transactions list. We want to change the inside content of this. As you can see now, this follows the structure. If I remove that goes, if I remove this, that goes. If I remove that, now I'm going to cut this goes, right? We have nothing there. What you want to do is, first of all, we're going to declare the empty string. This empty string is going to be the one that we'll be using to render the transactions. So let's just say let's transactions list is equal to document.createSelector transaction. So that is going to be getting us this transaction list over here, right? Okay, now we're going to also let transaction item is equal to empty string. Okay, cool. If I were to go here and say this dot inner HTML is equal to transaction item, you'll see that it's not going to change anything. But if I say this is like hello, just make sure that this is correct. Let's make sure we're getting the right transaction list, and then transaction list.html is equal to transaction item, where transaction item is that. Okay. Okay, nothing is happening because we are not calling the function. So let's go ahead and call the function. I will go ahead and call it here on top as well, because this is the first thing that I want the UI to render as soon as the user opens the app. Okay, so we're gonna leave this empty. If it's empty, we're gonna just print a string that say, or you have no transactions yet. Please make a deposit. Okay, cool. So by default, it's gonna take this, right? It's gonna take the string if this is empty. This is the or operator. What this will do is gonna attempt to bind this value here, but if this value is an empty string or is undefined, it's gonna bind this one. Okay. So now, inside of this loop, I want to say transaction item plus equal to backticks, open space, so that I can paste my HTML. You remember that's HTML, the one for rendering the item like that. So now if I do this, you can see that I can print 1, 2, 3, 4 items because I have 4 items on my transaction loop, but I'm not using it yet. So currently this is just a number, so I can just use the $ and bind this transaction here. You can see now that the numbers are properly replaced, even though the currency here is messed up on the negatives because it's an R then a negative number, which is not correct, but at least it makes sense according to what we have here on the screen. So now what we're going to do is we're going to print the positive value of this, okay? But we're going to ignore that for now. We're going to deal with this, okay? So what we're going to say here, we're going to say here, if the transaction is greater than 0, we're going to print deposit, else we're going to print purchase data. This is like an if statement, but a very good way and clean way of writing the if statement for one-liners. So we can practice that syntax. So you see now, if it's negative, it's doing a data purchase. So that means we can do a very same strategy to actually format the numbers, okay? So first of all, here on the transaction, I'm going to use the maths class. I'm going to say maths.absolute. Maths.absolute basically make the number positive. It ignores the negative signs. I don't want to put the negative there because it messes my currency, okay? For currency, I don't want to hard code the currency. I'm going to bind another value here, which is currency, since I already have it, which is this one. But now, before that, here as well, I'm going to bind another value, right? This value is going to be exactly like this, okay? It's going to be exactly like this. It's going to say, if transaction is greater than 0, I want to print nothing. Otherwise, I'm going to print what? A negative. So now, my list is actually formatted correctly. We do a check. If transaction is greater than 0, then we do a deposit, else purchase. We do a check. If transaction is greater than 0, then we print the empty space as a negative. If you wanted to, you would do a plus, but I don't know. I don't know why would you do that like that. I don't know. I don't think it's necessary. Okay. Cool. So now we binded our data successfully from our list. The only thing that is hard-coded right now is a date. And we don't have a way to know the dates since we are not using objects. Let's hope in the future we are going to be able to do that, okay? The least thing I can do is put today's dates. That's it. Okay. Now, we still have a problem though, because our buy data and deposit is not yet working. Okay, now we can render this stuff here on the UI and we can have the balance calculated accordingly, which is cool. Can prove that by saying maybe this deposit was just 200 rands, and now if you save, you can see that balance is 500 because this deposit was 1,200 and you remove 200, 1,000 minus 500, it's 500. Perfect. Okay. Now, we want to change these values though when the user, by the way, if you do not have any transactions, you can see that that's how it goes. We have 0 and we do not have any transactions yet. So we're going to leave the app at this state now because we already know that this would be rendered dynamically. Then we're going to start by making a deposit of 1,000 and hit deposit. Okay, now we want to see the transaction and we want to see the balance changes, but that is not happening right now. Now let's look into the array functions. If I want to add something in this array, of which that's exactly what I want to do if the user deposits the money, right? I want to say transactions dot push then we convert this amount to integer and we push it into the array. Okay, and then let's just say console.log transactions. Let's see if this will work. Okay, I have my deposit model up, put 1,000, and I click deposit. Okay, you can see that now transactions have the array of 1,000 inside. Let's do it again. Let's put 200. You can see that now the array have 200 rands inside. It's perfect. So now that means we're kind of done, man. We're already done. We're almost there. All we need to do is to here is to actually just call these two functions here. The one that will update the balance and the one that will render the transactions. We don't need to change the greetings. Okay? So after we push to the array, we have a new value inside of the array. Now we need to find out what is the new balance and render the table of transactions. Okay, let's do this again. 1,000, deposit, success. Then the balance is 1,000 and we have a deposit of 1,000 rands. Let's do it with 500. Bam, bam. Okay, we have 1,500 right now. As you can see, our app is starting to really work now. I update my name and success, and my name is changed there on the app. The only problem is that if I refresh, all the data is gone. We are going to fix that with local storage right now. Okay. Before we get to that though, why don't we just go ahead and do by data? Okay, because it seems like it's going to be just straightforward since it's the same logic. You see, this is why functions are powerful, because you can reuse data. So I will just copy these lines of code and put them over there, and this should just work. Okay, this should just work. But what if in the deposit the amount is actually not a number, or is actually less than 0? Okay, let's just start by say if not amount, then we'll say please enter the amount to deposit and return. Okay, so let's test that. Deposit, click enter, please enter the amount to deposit, then it returns. If I put 1,000 and deposit, then successfully, right? Perfect. Okay, let's also say here currency plus the amount. Also here, let's include the currency. Okay. Okay, that is when the user is not filling in anything. To avoid the users from filling in the letters like this, which is really nonsense, like that, it's breaking the app, we need to just make sure that here on the forms we use the type number, not text. Then HTML will actually force them to put in a number there, otherwise it's not going to be able to submit. Okay, cool. So let's try again. Now let's fix our CSS. Input type text, let's just say input. Let's not specify the type here. Okay, let's just say input. Okay, amount, perfect. This looks good now. So if I try to enter the letters, you see now it's going to say please enter a number. Now we just got the free validation. If I enter a negative value, it's going to do it. So we need to add that validation now. Okay, I'm going to say if this is less than 0, we're also gonna alert and return. So if you return, you're basically saying you're stopping here, you're not continuing with the function. the return will actually stop the execution of the function. Okay, so that's what this will do. So now to test that, if you say deposit and I enter negative 888, it's going to say please enter a positive amount to deposit. If I don't enter anything, it's going to say please enter the amount. If I enter 0, you say 0 deposited. Okay, so I need to make sure that this is less or equal to 0. Okay, 0, please enter a positive amount to deposit. Perfect. Okay, so here we also need to do some updates, of course. So here we can just say if not amount on the, this is when you actually purchase the data. Let's handle this and return. Please enter the amount to purchase data, if not amount. And again, we're going to actually do the same thing here. For this one, we could also put this inside of a function to remove the code duplication, but I will let it slide since the message is different. Okay, I'll let it slide for now. I will let it slide. Okay, cool. Let's buy data. Enter amount to purchase data. I want the data for negative 900. Please enter positive amount. Okay, as much as this is actually saving this as the negative, we need to make sure the user is not able to do that, because that is our logic. The user doesn't know that. But here we're going to enter the number and we're going to just multiply it by -1. Okay, so now let's deposit 1,000. Buy data for 200. See, it's perfect. It's working as expected. Okay. But what if I want to buy data for 1,000 rands? See, now my balance is negative. We also need to take care of that when we're doing the purchase. So what we need to do is we need to call this function, right? Update balance. We need to call update balance before we push. Why are we calling this? Because this is going to go through the current transaction and find the new balance, right? Just to make sure that we have the correct balance. So we're going to call this first and say if balance is less than amount, then just alert insufficient funds and return. So let's try to buy data for 1,000, insufficient funds. Okay, let's try to deposit 1,000 first. Okay, and then let's buy data for 1,000, insufficient funds. If balance is less than amount, what is the balance? Okay, let's check this. The balance is 0 and this is like, okay, oh, this is definitely correct because this is 10,000, not 1,000. Okay, save. I purchased successfully and I'm on 0. If I buy again for 20 rands, it's insufficient funds. So now our app is safe and it is validating information and our transaction are all working. One more thing we need to do, we need to make sure that the data is saved whenever we're doing transaction and whenever we're updating our profile. Like remember, if I do this and save, success, deposit, save, success. But whenever I refresh, it's going back to the default values and we do not want that. So for that, we're going to use something called LocalStorage. If you go to your DevTools again, go to application, you will see a section called LocalStorage. Okay, it has some keys there. You can clear this. We can insert something here. Can we insert something to the local storage really? I don't think I can. Oh, 00999. Copy this. This is a key. Okay. Let's say the value is 111. Okay. So now I have this in my local storage. I can refresh. See, this is there, right? If I go to my code here on the first line, up there anyway, really, but it's easier to do it here. I can say, let's talk about local storage. To store data in a browser. Okay, this is only browser limited, obviously. This data can only be accessed in this browser. So, for example, I can say const test is equal to local storage dot get item, and then I can pass a key. Okay, and then I can just alert test. You see, 111. If I go there to the local storage and change the value, this will change. If I say local storage dot set item, I'm setting this key now to this. I'm overriding those settings and save. You see now it's gonna alert this. If again I go to my DevTools, you can see now this value has changed. So that's exactly what we're going to do. When the user updates their profile, we're going to make sure that their data is stored in the local storage. Transactions are stored in the local storage. We don't need to store the balance because we calculate it based on the transactions. We need to store the two. So, how to do that? Okay, now that we know this can go now. Okay, let's go to the I think we need to start by rendering transactions and then calculate balance. Okay, so that this can work. I'll show you why. Okay, cool. Now, this thing is going to get in transactions from the local storage instead. So, but let's start by setting it. Let's say now I'm updating my profile, okay? I think that's the easiest way. Handle profile update. I'm just doing the greetings. But now what I need to do is I need to say local storage dot set item. I will set the name to the name, okay? And then the greetings, I want the greetings to get the name from local storage. So just say const check name is equal to local storage dot find item name. Then I'll say if check name, then I will override the name in the system with this, okay? So let's try. Edit profile, automation temp, save. This is updated successfully. Let's refresh. Oh, now it's not going. It's there. It sticks because now whenever I'm creating, I just check first if we do have a name in the local storage and I use that. Okay, so it's perfect. This sticks. So now we need to do it the same thing with the transactions. Okay, so whenever we are saving transaction, we need to make sure that we update the local storage. So we can just say local storage again, dot set item. The key is gonna be transactions, and then we're gonna save transactions. Transactions, remember, it's an array, so we need to use the JSON.string file to convert the array to the string, because local storage stores, you see this function, it takes the string key and the string value, not string key and array value. So you need to make sure that you are using the string, and this JSON class here provide you with a function to take any object and convert it to a string, or any array and convert it to a string. So perfect. Now, what we want to do is we can do this. It doesn't matter anymore though. We're going to go to transactions and do the same thing. We're going to check the local storage first if it's an item. We're going to say const check transactions is equal to local storage dot get item transactions using the key, and then we're going to check if transactions are there. If that's the case, we're going to again use JSON. Remember, this is a string, so we need to use that function that will convert JavaScript object to a JavaScript JSON object to a string to an object. So we're gonna do that and then render our transactions. Okay, let's see. You see our app flicks, right? If we refresh, it's kind of does this. So now we can remove all our default values so that these things can only render using JavaScript, okay? To remove all these flicks, okay? Okay, good. You see now we don't have all those problems. Cool. Let's deposit money. Deposit 1,000 and save. Let's refresh. Let's look at the local storage. Okay, we have transactions, which is an empty array. Okay, cool. So that is because we did it in a wrong place. You see, orders when it comes to coding matters a lot, right? When we're handling the deposit, okay, our code base is long now, so it's starting to be tricky to find stuff. Okay, I want this function that's handling transaction, not render, handling purchase. Okay, so we need to make sure that this is done after we push, because now it's not pushing the proper thing, right? So let's see now. Okay, 1,000, refresh, 1,000. See now our data is not going for deposits, but the one for purchases is still going because we haven't done that. So we're just gonna do the same thing here. After we've done the push, we need to make sure that we do this, okay? And then we update the balance and we render transactions. So let's buy data, 200, buy, okay? We have 200, now this is 800. It's always going to calculate properly since it's calculating from the data. So yes, we successfully did it. We added validations. Now our app can literally work. Okay, sorry, what I'm trying to do here is not happening. Okay, cool. Okay guys, we did it. So now we have the JavaScript apps that actually works correctly. We can deposit some money. Let's go ahead, deposit 5,000. Success. Okay, we have 5,800 because we only spent 200 francs so far. Now we can buy data for 10,000. Let's see. No, we have insufficient funds. Okay, what about 5,900? Obvious, sufficient. Let's do 5,500. Buy. Done. Data for the family, bro. Done. We have 300 in our account and we have all the transactions.